In World War II, millions of civilians learned a hard truth that, honestly, modern people often forget. When large systems fail, when emergency services are overwhelmed, and when danger becomes constant, the home stops being a place of comfort and becomes, well, a defensive position. Cities across Europe and Asia were bombed night after night. Police and fire crews were stretched thin. Neighbours relied on neighbours. Survival depended less on weapons and more on preparation, discipline, and, smart use of space. Many of the most effective home defence tactics developed during the war were never written into manuals. They were learned the hard way and passed quietly from household to household. These methods weren't about fighting armies. They were about staying alive, protecting families, and really preventing small threats from turning into fatal disasters. Now, before we move forward, if you value survival knowledge drawn from real history rather than theory, I'd encourage you to take a moment to subscribe. Survival Stories exists to preserve what actually worked when people had no backup coming. You see, that's why civilians during the Second World War focused on prevention rather than confrontation. Wartime civilians understood something that, modern culture often ignores. Most danger is avoidable if it's detected early and managed quietly. Air raids, fires, looters, and structural collapse were far more common threats than direct violence. As a result, home defence focused on reducing visibility, limiting access, controlling damage, and, maintaining order under stress. Homes weren't fortified castles, They were made safer by removing weaknesses. And really, blackout discipline protected homes from attack and intrusion. One of the most effective World War II home defence tactics was blackout discipline. You see, lights visible from outside marked targets for bombers and also signalled occupied homes during chaos. Families learned to block windows completely using thick curtains, boards, or layered fabric sealed at the edges. This practice did more than hide buildings from aircraft. It denied opportunistic intruders information. A dark, silent house looked abandoned or alert, not distracted. Even today, light discipline remains one of the simplest ways to avoid drawing attention during power outages or civil unrest. Modern application is straightforward. At night, prevent light leaks. Use interior lighting only when necessary. Treat visibility as a liability. During the war, people quickly learned that not every room was equal. Interior rooms with fewer windows became shelters. Walls were reinforced with furniture, bookshelves and sandbags when available. Windows were shuttered or boarded, not to stop bombs, but to block debris and reduce blast pressure. Families selected 1 or 2 rooms as safe zones and kept them clear of unnecessary clutter. This reduced injury during shock events and made evacuation faster if needed. Today, the same principle applies. Identify the strongest room in your home. Reduce glass exposure. Position heavy furniture as buffers rather than obstacles. Defensive thinking begins with layout. You know, fire actually killed more civilians than bombs in many cities. Incendiary devices would ignite roofs, attics, and even curtains, making the threat of fire just as terrifying as the air raids themselves. As a result, during the Second World War, households treated fire defence as survival priority number one. It really became a matter of life and death. So, homes kept sand, water buckets, and basic tools ready at all times. Attics were checked every night, chimneys were sealed, and flammable clutter was removed. Families trained themselves to respond instantly to any sign of sparks or smoke, always prepared for the worst. The lesson still holds. Most disasters escalate because response is delayed. Fire prevention and early action, you know, remain the most effective home defence tools available. Occupied homes that maintained routine were less likely to be targeted by criminals during blackouts. Doors were closed deliberately. Entry points were secured quietly. People moved with purpose. Civilians learned not to advertise fear. Calm behaviour, well, it suggested alertness. Even today, you know, confidence and consistency discourage intrusion more effectively than, well, displays of force. WWII. Civilians practice controlled access. Doors stayed locked. Windows were secured. Visitors were verified through barriers, not opened blindly. This wasn't paranoia. It was standard procedure in uncertain conditions. Modern application means treating access points as checkpoints. Visibility, verification, and restraint matter more than confrontation, honestly. The forgotten lesson of the Second World War home defence is this. Survival favours those who manage risk quietly and early. Prevention beats reaction. Structure beats strength. Discipline beats panic. None of these methods require weapons. They require awareness, preparation, and, well, respect for how threats actually unfold. Power outages, natural disasters, and civil disruptions, they tend to follow the same patterns today. Emergency services are delayed. Information is incomplete. Visibility, it attracts attention. Fires spread fast. And, you know, safe spaces truly matter. The people who survived the Second World War at home didn't wait for help. They adapted their environment, controlled their exposure, and, importantly, stayed ready. If this breakdown helped you see home defence through a historical and practical lens, subscribe to Survival Stories and share this video. These lessons aren't about fear. They're about resilience built quietly, long before it's needed.